Hi, this is Corey with Invest Like an Old Man. Today I'll be discussing real estate. This is not going to be like some of my other videos where I talk about this in general. I'm going to do that on some different videos. Today I'm going to walk you through some specifics on a deal that I did and give you all of the details, including how much money I had to put into it, how much I paid for the property, how I found the property, how much I rent the property out for, and how I found a tenant. I'm going to tell you all the good stuff and the bad stuff that happened on this particular property that I bought. So, as with all of my videos, please make sure you do your own research. You can leave comments and ask me questions out, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. You've got to make sure that you research your own investments, whether that's stocks or real estate, to make sure you find what's good for you. I'm not your financial advisor, but I do want to give you information that can be a good starting point. So, I'm going to be talking about a property that I purchased in 2017. So if you see me looking down, it's because I actually have my HUD and my closing disclosure in front of me so that I can give you all of the details. I don't like to talk about things theoretically about how much money you can make. I really like to give you real life details so that you can judge for yourself. So in this particular unit, I'll tell you how I found it. I found it working at work. I met someone who was in real estate, and we were just talking. And at the time, I owned one property, and so I was telling him I was looking to purchase another property, and I asked him if he had any that he'd be willing to sell. He said no at first, and I said, I'm sure you got something out there. The next day, he thought about it. He said, well, I have one property that I own free and clear. I don't have a mortgage on it. That's the only one that would make sense for me to sell, because I could, get a significant chunk since I don't have any debt on it. So I said, send me the address. I looked it up, and I realized potentially be a good deal. So I reached out to him. We didn't involve a realtor. I'm not suggesting that you do that without a realtor, but I used to sell real estate for years, so I'm very comfortable with the process. So he and I kind of actually did it through text message. We went back and forth on the price, and we narrowed it down, and I made an offer at $66,000 for this townhouse. It was a 3-bedroom townhouse that was 1,200 square feet. It's outside of Richmond, Virginia. And so he accepted it. So what I did was, at that point in time, I told him I'd draw up a contract. I called my lawyer. I'm very familiar with the law office that I used to use for closings. And I basically called him and said, hey, I'm going to use your office to close my loan. Do you have a blank real estate contract that you can give me for free? And they say, sure, I'll leave it out on the receptionist's desk. Just come by and pick it up. Once I got it, I knew how to fill it out. It's pretty much fill in the blanks. And because I sold real estate, I knew what the process looked like. So once I met with him, he signed it. The next step was to get a home inspection. That was one of the contingents I put in there, is that I wanted to get a home inspection to make sure I knew what I was getting into. Once we got the home inspection completed, typically this is where a deal can break down, because a good home inspector is really going to try to find every single thing wrong with the property, even if it's small. And, as a buyer, you have to decide how petty you want to be. And as a seller, you have to decide, what you're willing to fix to sell this property. So maybe it was around $2,500 to $3,000 in repairs, most of it minor. But he did agree to either fix all of the things or credit me, the cost to cure is what they call it. So if it was something like, chipped paint or something that was $50, instead of him getting someone out there, he can just give me the credit towards closing, and I could use those funds to fix it later on. So we went through that process. All right, so I told you I paid $66,000 for it. I did a loan through a big bank. I won't say the bank, and I had to put 15% down. So I believe that was $10,900 that I had to put down. I don't remember the exact amount, but what I can tell you is my total cost out of pocket to close this loan was $11,486.77. That's how much I came out of pocket when you factor in the appraisals I had to do, had to pay for a home inspection out of pocket, closing costs, and then your prepays and the cost to the lawyers to do the title search and to record the lien at the courthouse. So $11,486. I did a mortgage on that property for $56,000, right? So I just told you I bought it for $66,900. By the time you factored in my closing costs and everything else, that was about $68,000. My loan amount ended up being $56,000. Since it was a investment property, the rate is going to be higher on an investment property than it's going to be on a a residential property that's your primary residence. So my interest rate on that was 5.25%. So 56,000, 5.25%. My monthly principal and interest was $309. And I keep saying was, it is. I'm in the process of refinancing it now, but it still currently is $309.24. Once you factor in the mortgage insurance, so I told you that I only put 15% down. If you put less than 20% down when you're purchasing the property, typically you're going to have mortgage insurance. So I have mortgage insurance, and that's $24 a month. And then I have my real estate taxes, and I have my mortgage insurance, my homeowner's insurance. Those are all the things that are in that monthly payment. So that came up to $406.53 total. Final thing is, because I told you it was a townhouse, I have homeowners association dues. Those come up to $55 a month. And what those cover is, they cut the grass, they cover all of the stuff outside of the townhouse, any common areas, the roof, the siding. That's what happens when you have a townhome and you pay HOA fees. They cover all of that stuff for you. So even though it's an expense, it kind of makes me feel good that I know in 10 years I don't have to pay for a roof. I don't have to paint the outside of the house. The only thing I have to worry about is the inside of the house. And while that cuts into my profit, it sort of helps me sleep better at night knowing that I won't have those major expenses. So I've just told you I'm paying about $461 a month. Those are my expenses on this property. So how much do I rent it for? Well, I could easily rent it for $1,100. I currently rent it for $1,000. I don't try to beat people over the head and get the maximum amount of money out of them, because then you tend to have higher turnover. And as you'll see later, turnover in a property is what kills your profit. What makes you profitable is to get a tenant in there and keep them in there. So in this example, I rented it out for $1,000 a month. My expenses are $461 a month. So that leaves me with a $539 profit per month, right? So $539 that I'm making on this property per month. And that's at the top line. That's before I count any repairs, any vacancies. This is just the top line if everything goes right. So if you take the $539 a month and multiply that by 12 months, that is $6,468 a year. That's pretty good, right? To make $6,468 a year on an $11,486 investment, that's about a 56% return on my investment, right? And I'm only specifically talking about cash on cash. How I look to get my returns, I'm looking at how much money I put out of my pocket and what's the return I get on that. There are a lot of other factors that you can use, which is appreciation on your property. But for me, I'm specifically looking for cash on cash returns. So that's a great return on paper. Now, with this particular property, when I purchased it, there was a property manager already managing it. So I allowed them to, and it also was a tenant in the property. So I allowed the tenant to stay, and I kept the property manager on until the end of the lease term. So I was giving up 10% of the rent, which was $100 a month. So for the first few months I owned the property, my expenses were really $639 a month. I was making $439 a month basically. That first couple of months while I kept the property manager on. And I only kept them on because they were already there. They found a tenant, and I figured it'd just be an easier transition. I ultimately got rid of them and started managing it myself and didn't have to pay that fee. So that tenant that was in that property paid late the first month I got it, right? So they paid late and got behind. They were paying me a little bit of money at a time, but ultimately, after about 3 or 4 months, I had to evict the tenant because they really didn't catch up. So that cost me some money, right? Now, because I had a property manager, which was another reason I kept them on, I had a feeling this tenant was going to be someone that was going to be trouble. They handled most of the eviction. I didn't have to go to court. I didn't have to run back and forth to the rental property. They handled all of that for me, and my costs were pretty minimal. 50, $60 for the court cost. And when the person moved and they got evicted, they moved the majority of their stuff out. They didn't move it all. I paid someone $100 to go over there and clean out the property. And I actually, never want to evict someone, but at that point in time, she wasn't paying. She had to go. This is an investment. It's not charity. I'll work with you as much as I can, but ultimately, you can't live in my house for free. So once it was vacant, of course, at that point in time, I had to go in and paint, clean it up, and do a couple things. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I didn't spend a lot of money. Paint, it's only a couple $100 to, get someone to come in there and paint, especially when it's vacant. A lot of that stuff you can do yourself. I rented a carpet cleaner from Home Depot or Lowe's, from Lowe's, as a matter of fact, and I went there and cleaned the carpet. The carpet itself was in pretty good shape. It was the previous owner had put it in there a few years ahead of that. So all I really had to do was, get it professionally cleaned, which maybe was $150. Clean the carpet. I did that myself. I rented the cleaner for $55 from Lowe's and went over there in less than an hour. Carpet looked great. And paint. And I did a lot of that myself. And I had a handyman come over to patch up some of the holes that, tenant had in the walls, and, just kind of do some small stuff. So let's say I spent $1,500. I don't think it was that much, but let's say I spent $1,500. Keep in mind that even though the tenant was paying late, I still collected some rent. They didn't pay it all, so I was able to evict them. But let's say they owed me $4,000. I probably collected $2,500 of that $4,000. So the $1,500 that I put in really kind of came out the rent that I made from the tenant. So once I did that, I got another tenant in there, and this tenant actually had help from the government. It wasn't quite Section 8, but she was from New York. She had help from the government, so she actually paid her rent for a full year in advance. So for that next year, the rent was paid up for a full year. She had very little repairs, very little reason to call me. So I got close to that full, $539 a month that I'm telling you about. Maybe there was one or two small minor repairs, but it wasn't anything major. After that year, and the government had paid for her rent, she started becoming slow pay. So she paid for a couple of months, and then after that, ended up having to evict her, right? And this property that I'm talking about, out of all my properties, is the only one that I've had to evict tenants. Why do I think that is? Because the property manager found these tenants, and I didn't. The tenants that I found, I feel like I have a much better screening process, and I've not had to evict tenants in the 8 or 9 years that I've owned rental properties other than this one. And the tenant that I have in that same property now pays on time every month, has renewed the lease a couple times, and have not had any issues with, because I got rid of that property management company, and I did my own screening process. And that's just a lesson. A lot of times these property management companies, all they want to do is get someone in the property, right? That's all they want to do. They can't take time to screen 50 tenants, because some of these companies are managing 1,000 different properties or 300 different properties. So they're not going to go show 10, 15 people your home and pick the best person. What they're going to do is the first person that applies for the home that meets whatever criteria they set up, they're going to choose them. Whereas what I do is I pick the most qualified person. I may get 100 people that want to apply for the property. I'm not going to show it to 100 people, but I have them send me their income, their credit, and all that basic information first. I narrow it down to, about 4 people. I'll show them the property, and if those people are interested, that's when I start asking for the credit reports. I use Zillow, so I market the property through Zillow, HotPass, and Trulia. Zillow has a rental software that allows the tenant to pay a fee, and it sends you the results of their background check, including their credit report. So for me, the reason I don't have just anyone apply for it is I don't want to take tenants' money and waste their money. If you tell me you just got evicted 2 years ago, most likely I'm not going to be renting to you. So it's no use in you paying $39 to do a credit report if you already know that's the issue, right? So I try to narrow it down so I'm not just having a bunch of people apply when they don't really have a good chance of getting approved. So when I got this tenant in, he has had some notes due to no fault of his own. We've had some repairs that have had to happen there. So had actually a ceiling fall in. I had to pay $1,000 to get that fixed. Had a plumbing issue, had to pay $500 to get that fixed, and then a bunch of minor things that are $100 here, $100 there. But I would say I've had to spend over the last couple of years on that property about $2,000. So let's average that out and say $1,000 a year in repairs to the property. So I told you I was making $539 a month, and that was $6,468 a year. Let's overestimate it. Let's say I spent $1,500 a year on repairs. I still make $5,000 a year off of that, off an investment that I put in 2017. Keep in mind, it's not like I don't have the equity in the home. So the final piece is, I talked about cash on cash return earlier. You still have appreciation of the property. So I told you I paid $66,000 for the property. It recently assessed, and I'll get the appraisal hopefully in a week or so after I do this refinance on this property and another one. But it recently got assessed at $90,000, right? So in a couple of years, that property value is going from $66,000 to $90,000. So if you do the math, I paid $11,000 out of my pocket, and now I've made about $22,000 or $24,000 in appreciation on the property. So I've tripled my initial investment as far as equity, not counting any cash flow I've made. So even in worst case scenarios, I factor in all the negative stuff. This has been a great deal for me, a great property, because once you start making money, I don't take it out right away. I let it build up. I let it build up to have 6 months worth of reserves. So basically, I don't take any money from a property until I have 6 months worth of reserves. So if I have a repair, that's coming out of 6 months worth of reserves. If it's vacant, that's coming out of 6 months worth of reserves. So I don't live off the money. I very rarely touch it. But in theory, if I have 6 months worth of reserve, even if something happens, even if it's vacant, I can still take cash flow and live off of that if I needed to. And I think that's what's really important, is to make sure that you have a strategy around how you want to do this. You can't take every dollar, because stuff's going to happen. You're going to have repairs. There's going to be vacancies. But this is a real life deal that worked out great for me, even if I factor in all of the negative things that's happened to it. I've gotten all the money out that I put into it. So the $11,000 I put into it since 2017, I've gotten that in my hand. I still have the equity in the home where I've have $24,000 of money that I made on $11,000. So you do the math on that, it's just an excellent return. So that's why I love real estate. But I also invest in stocks because I believe in having a well-rounded portfolio. This was a longer video than what I typically do. But if you like it, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like it, and share it. Thank you. I appreciate it.